let's go more into your story, man. So you're part of Pace Morby's group. You're part of Sub 2, especially at the beginning, which is cool. We were that might have been how we met in the first place. I'm not sure because I also joined Sub 2 around that time. So
Yeah.
because I don't remember exactly how you and I met. I just remember like seeing your Instagram stuff and
That's
being
a good
like, all
point.
right,
We probably did meet that way, man, honestly.
probably. But
Yeah.
so talk about the transition to multifamily. How'd that happen? What prompted that? Go into that a
Yeah.
little bit.
We were like always in mastermind groups, networking, and we got on one. It was a wholesaling mastermind group, and it was about, I want to say, like 13, 15 months into the business. We're on the mastermind call. It was in the nighttime, and one gentleman jumped on. His name was Alvin Hope Johnson. He's a syndicator that focuses on development. He was talking about how he was structuring that kind of deal. It was through a syndication. I had no idea what it was at the time, but I thought it was
Right.
fascinating because one, he's an African American guy, so like, I'm Hispanic. You don't see a lot of minorities, as many as you do other races. So that those are things that caught my eye, and I was like, okay. And he was telling us, you guys can do this too. I was like, cool. Like, that sounds awesome. And he was wearing like a nice watch and things like that made me seem like, okay, this guy has it put together. And I'm not doing it for the materialistic things, but just to kind of paint the picture. And he seemed like he was doing well. He was enjoying what he was doing, and I was very intrigued. So I started looking into syndication, and I'd already been watching Grant Cardone, who had been planting that seed in my head as well. Like, get into multifamily as soon as possible, as soon as possible. And we just kept thinking, we can't do it because we don't have enough money. We have to wait until we build enough cash or capital
Right.
to be able to afford to get into multifamily. But I realized, wait. Like, if I don't need to put all my money, if it doesn't have to be my own money, and I can raise it, then technically I don't need money. So that was a limiting belief, believe it or not. You don't need your own money. It is harder if you don't have money, but it's still possible. We realized that, okay, why do we want to get into commercial real estate? We kept learning. We realized that one, it's more scalable. Two, it's less risk, believe it or not, because with a 100-unit apartment complex, you can sustain the debt on that asset even if 10 people are not paying. But if you have one property and one person stops paying, now you're in charge of paying that debt, or else it's just going to go into foreclosure. So that's why there's less risk. And on top of that, we always wanted to get into commercial real estate. That was the end goal, anyways. And we were obviously young and just getting started. We were working like 9 to 9 every day, anyways. I was doing it
Mm-hmm.
all day, anyways. I was thinking, why not just climb up this tree that I'm going to eventually jump into, anyways? Why not just start now? Like, I couldn't answer that question. And then my brothers and I had a mastermind. We were like, okay, what's holding us back? Why don't we do it? Eventually came to the conclusion that we were just going to go for it. So how that looked was, we were obviously spending money on marketing for single family. We were doing cold calling and text blast, RVMs, ringless voicemails, and we were like, we're going to cut all that off. So we cut it off, took the profits, had a pipeline, and we were like, this pipeline is going to help us survive until we get our first deal. Little did we know that was not going to last as long as we thought, but it was a pipeline nonetheless.
Right.
Eventually, closing a few more deals over time in the single family space that helped, pay some bills and things like that. We just started cold calling brokers ourselves. The first thing we did, was we read the best ever apartment syndication book by Joe Fairless. He's
Mm-hmm.
probably the most famous outside of Grant Cardone. He's like, he runs a company, or he's a partner on a company called Ashcroft Capital. He's a big partner in the space. Like, a lot of people know him. He throws a really awesome event. That's how I learned about the book. He had a podcast. I was listening to that as well. But the book was the first thing we read. And we treated it like a textbook. So it took us about 3 days, believe it or not, to get through it through Audible. It was on Audible. And it was a long book. So we kind of like crammed it, took all the notes, and then came together again, another mastermind, and decided like what were the next action steps. And the first thing was, he talked about a lot of different things, but one thing we did was, he said create a thought leadership platform, which is a social media content on Instagram, YouTube. He had a podcast. So we were like, okay, why do you need to do that? Because you want to establish credibility when you're raising capital. So like, if people can't find you online, or they're not like thinking of you as an expert in the field, why would they give you money? You're a ghost, like, for all they know, you're lying. Unless you're on
Right.
social media, or unless you have a podcast where you're talking to other experts. So one, we started the podcast that we have, and two, we were already on social media, which is
Name of the podcast real quick. Let's plug it real quick.
the real estate monopoly. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we were already on social media, man. So
I'll put it up there, but you keep going.
thank you. And we were already on social media, so that helped. We were like, okay, now the content will just change. That's what we thought. We started just posting content about multifamily and things like that, as well as just learning. And we started taking action. So in the book, it talks about going straight to brokers. And in multifamily, specifically large multifamily, over 90% of deals are dealt with and handled by real estate brokers, commercial real estate brokers. Different from single family, which typically you can go direct to seller. For us, we were like, all right, we're going to call brokers and try to get our first deal. Like we'll just do it. We'll take as much action as we need. We quickly realized while calling these brokers that one, they speak a completely different language. They ask you, where are you going to get the capital? How many deals have you done? What's your net worth? What's your liquidity? Things like that.
Mhm.
You have access to lenders? No, to all of them, right? Like none.
Yeah.
And quickly got rejected on all of those. And we were like, okay, let's take a step back. We need to find a mentor, which the book talks about, that you can leverage their track record.
Yeah.
Because even if you were to win a deal like magically, which will never happen, in my opinion, if you've never done a deal and you don't really know what you're doing, the broker can typically sniff that out pretty quickly. And the reason they
Yeah.
won't award you a deal, if it's 100 plus units, the reason they won't give it to you is because why would they think you can close? Most likely, typically you can't. Once you get awarded the deal, let's say you do, and you aren't able to close, they're not going to get paid because they only get paid when you close based on their commission, right?
Right.
And it ruined their reputation as a broker to the seller. And it's all about reputation in real estate, but really, really big on reputation when it comes to multifamily. So the
Right.
broker wasn't taking us seriously. So we realized we need to find a mentor. We went to Bigger Pockets, started surfing the web, doing research on mentors, and I kind of walked you through how we did it. But we found a few groups. They were like mentorships, if you want to call them, just like Pace Morbies, but for multifamily syndication. And we came across one guy eventually named Mark Kinney. Paid a hefty fee to get in. It is, I would say, pretty expensive, but worth the investment because once we got into that group, now it was different. Now it was like game on. We're going to go back to the brokers, and as soon as they ask us, like, how many deals have you done? Yes, we've done this amount of deals. Mark Kinney has now over 11,000 units, over $1 billion assets under management. And the cool thing is you can leverage their track record and say that you're partnering with someone who has done all of this. Typically, they know who this guy is because he's so well known, has a great reputation. People are like, okay, I know this guy is serious. So they start sending you deals. Now, how I got into the first few deals, it was just by networking. So I was in a mastermind group that I joined through Mark. He has a network of people in the group. It's like 100 people. These certain people all do different things. Now they come from different backgrounds. A lot of them were executives at corporate in the corporate field, or come from back from like real estate, single family, fix and flips, and all ended up here. Now some of them are finding deals, some of them are raising capital, some of them just have a lot of money and are investing as LP investors, limited partners, or a passive investor in these deals, things like that. But I just made connections with people in the group, made friends with them, and found ways to bring them value. So for one guy, he found a deal in Jacksonville, Florida. It was 138 units, and I realized that I couldn't necessarily like bring investors in because I didn't have any investors at the time. But what I could do was find people who did have investors, but didn't have a great deal with a great operator, which is the person that runs the show on the deal, like executes the business plan. They didn't have the deal, but I had access to a deal, but they had access to money. I could connect the two and bring value to both parties, and then try to find a way to like, I'm like, hey man, if I make an introduction like this, a guy who can bring, a lot of money and he wants to partner with people like you, would that be a value? And he was like, yeah, it will be. It would be. So I made a few introductions, made a few calls, didn't take that much work initially on the back end. Like in the front end, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just hustling, talking to people, but building my network and keeping a note of who's who, what they want, what they need. So eventually made that connection. I was also able to meet some investors along the way. I brought some investors on. I was able to help that sponsor with some random things that he gave me to do. Like I was playing an active role, but on my first deal, I wasn't expecting to like have a very large role in the project. I just wanted to play a role, whatever, however small, and get a piece of the deal. So that's how we were able to get into the first one. And then I just saw that formula worked on the first
Oh,
deal.
hold on. I have a question.
Yeah,
So for knowing the guy who knows the people who like are the investors, right? That's the level of degrees of separation, right? That you found the guy who knows all the people with the money, right?
correct.
Okay. So then I'm curious, how much does one get of a multifamily deal for that? Like I'm just curious what that's worth to a deal.
Yeah, like and I won't go into specifics because like for deals like this, obviously there's a lot of equity to go around, but you're pretty much as any GP is compensated based on their overall contribution to a deal, and my
Right.
contribution in that deal wasn't large, so it wasn't that big, and it wasn't that big on the first four deals, if I'm being transparent. But the thing is, one, I was getting an education. Two,
Yeah.
I am a GP on those deals, so I have that track record. I have access to calls. I'm on the calls on all of them. When you're doing that, it helps you with your confidence. I visit the property
Yeah.
multiple times a year. I'm helping them with like the minute things that they don't want to do, but I'll do it happily, on the first
Hmm.
few deals so I can kind of learn a lot as I go. And that's stuff
Yeah.
that you cannot find in mentorships. Like I don't even know if you could pay someone to do that. Like you could probably invest in a deal a large amount and they'll give you access to all that. But for what I did, I was just getting like invaluable return. And it wasn't always monetary. It was more so educational. In regards to answer your question, it wasn't that large an amount. Obviously, we would not just bringing in people. We were like, I was keeping my investors updated. I was helping with some marketing pieces, small things like that they just didn't want to do. I was helping out with, just to make sure we're compliant as well. But it was really just me learning a lot throughout that process. So we multiplied that process by like 4. So we did that on the first 4 deals, and then to come to our 5th deal, which we just closed on the 15th. And I won't
Nice.
talk about too much because the offering is still open. There's a lot of like rules with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and if it's a 506B deal, you're not allowed to advertise. So that's why I'm careful with my wording. But
Yeah.
we closed on a deal last month where that I'll go into like the learning lessons on that deal. So my brother, he's our acquisitions guy. He's my older brother, to clarify. He was just reaching out to brokers. Eventually, he got a hold of one who let him know that he had an opportunity in a certain market that we look in. That's what happens with these brokers. Most of the times, you're just going to have to like get through hundreds of deals to find one that actually pencils out. And eventually, one will, but you just have to be consistent and persistent with it. Eventually, he found one. We were awarded the deal. We went and walked it, underwrote it again after. So like initially, you'll underwrite a deal using an analyzer. It's like an Excel model. You'll plug in the financials, the trailing 12, which are the profit and loss statement from the property that's provided to you by the broker. And then you'll also plug in the rent roll, which is also provided to you by the broker. The rent roll is just keeping track of each unit and what they're getting in rent. You combine the two and kind of plug it into an analyzer. He does it, so like I just know how he does it, but I don't actually do it myself because I don't like doing it. He'll analyze it, come up with like returns, and as long as it checks the boxes and meets our returns, it's good to go. We'll go ahead and fast forward after walking it, and then you go to the property. You'll like walk it in person again with your team and make sure all the numbers crunch together. You'll submit your LOI once it gets accepted. You go and do due diligence with your inspection or inspectors and your rest of your team, your contractor, things like that. And that takes about 2 days typically, but it's like all day. Eventually, that's what we did on all of our properties. We were able to get it under contract after long negotiations. And once you get a property under contract, then it's time to raise capital. So typically you have anywhere from 45 to 60 days, and we always like to include a 30-day extension if needed. That'll put us about 90 days, and then 90 days to raise however much money you have to raise. So that's what we've done on all the deals. Typically, we get it done on time. Certain economic environments, it'll be harder to raise capital. Eventually, like we found our own deal, and that one was definitely difficult because we were like the lead sponsor on that deal. So we were kind of running the show, and we still are, and it's a lot of learning experience. But to go back to those first 4 deals, if we hadn't done that, it wouldn't have been possible to do this next one because through that process and journey, you're able to learn a lot. But on top of it, you get this confidence because you've done it before, you've seen it. And when you're speaking with investors or partners, lenders, insurance brokers, the broker, it helps to know subconsciously that you've done this before and you have an awesome team. That's the one thing that I'll have to like really give all the credit to is my mentor is awesome. Anytime I need him, and this guy's like worth a lot of money, could be doing a lot of better things with the time, but he wants to help people like us. So I have his number. I can call him whenever I want and he'll answer 99% of the time and he'll text me back very quickly. If not, having people like him in my network, and I can
Nice.
call it a friend now, is invaluable. So you have an awesome team that comes with certain groups like that. But that's how we've been able to get to this point. It's been 5 deals now, over 1,000 units that we've been able to partner on,
Hell yeah.
thankfully, because of the group.
I love it. That's awesome, my man. So talk a little bit about how would you recommend somebody start? Should they do it your way? Like just kind of, I almost consider that like a micro flip of multifamily. You're finding, you know, the guy who manages deals and actually makes them happen. And then you're just finding a guy who knows the money, who like actually has the money. And then so you're not really raising private money nor finding the deals, at least at the beginning. And then you're just kind of in the middle connecting them. Is that how you'd recommend people start the same way that you did, or is there another method, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the gist of that, like the mindset with that is there's just so many ways to bring value to people in life. And in this case, that's how I brought people value was through leveraging my relationships. And then obviously you have to do other things like that. They're not just gonna be like, oh, okay, you make one introduction, boom. That's all you have to do. No,
Right.
like you have to do other things too, which I did and I kind of went into. But that's how I initially got started was just by trying to be as valuable to these awesome, valuable people as I possibly could. So I got creative with that. No one taught us how to do that. We kind of just trial and error and fell upon that strategy and it worked. Now, obviously, we're doing our own deals. But to get started in multifamily specifically, I think it depends on your goals, your situation, and no journey will be the same. I always like to say that. So if you don't have any money at all, I would say, like, personally, I think you should probably try to get that situation changed. So you probably want to learn some skills. I think sales is probably the most important, sales and marketing. So if you can get like a sales job and then work your way up, maybe start buying small multifamily. You can always house hack like a duplex or a triplex and then slowly refinance and slowly build your capital and then eventually earn some type of equity stake in a larger deal if you want to, or just continue working your way up by going a small route. Or if you're really interested in syndication because you have parents or a network of people that you can raise capital from, all you need to do is find a deal and learn how to talk about that offering and that kind of deal structure to that kind of investor. If you think you're capable of that, go ahead and try that. You'd be surprised. Like regardless of your age or background or whatever, it's all a mindset. And mindset is just I think age is just a mindset. So it doesn't matter how old you are. It's all about how you know and kind of how you think, in my opinion. Now obviously
Right.
experience and wisdom comes over time, but like small things like how what is a syndication? What are the benefits? What is this deal? What are the risks? That's just knowledge, and over time you'll kind of get better at learning it quickly. But initially, it just takes a lot of time of like talking to people, actually doing it. But on top of that, just studying and being like obsessed with it. So there's certain things like that, and it's hard to me for me to give you like a direct direction. But I would say those two things, depending on where you're from, it's either trying to increase your income, or if you already have that going for you, then trying to learn more about what you're interested in, so that way you kind of pick a direction to go in. And I'm happy to like have people can reach out to me. My friend
We'll
who's
get
based
to that at the end. I'll put
yeah,
you at the very end we'll give out your info, your social,
shout out to
your birthday,
Ethan.
all that good
My good friend Ethan, man, he's back in town. Can't wait to see
stuff.
him. Gonna see him this weekend.
Your stories, so with working with your brothers, like on
Yeah,
this one that you're about to buy, you guys are the main GPs now, right? That's where you were
correct.
saying like on this new deal, like as in like so it's basically your deal, you're running it, you raised all the private money. Like are you guys the only GPs on it?
Good question. So no, not the only GPs. And as I mentioned, I'll try to like not go into too many specifics, but not the only GPs by any means. We have other partners that we're working with. As I mentioned, my mentor.
Yeah,
He's not only my mentor; he's my partner on deals. So he serves so many purposes. Whether he's giving advice or, in this case, he signs on loans for us. So he's a key
right.
principal, is what we call him.
That's the key person. That's the person you want to be is the guy who just signs the loans
Exactly.
and then
That's what we
talk about
all.
that
Yeah.
and just because I like people probably don't even know like how you can just make money just by being rich.
Yeah, no, so, like, what he does as you so, like, in the space that we were working in, when you're buying a $10 million property or $20 million property, you have to have a certain net worth and liquidity, and net worth obviously is what you're worth when you're looking at all of your assets minus your liabilities, and then on top of that, your liquidity is how much cash do you have in the bank. You have to meet a certain standard and requirements to be able to sign on certain loan amounts. When you're buying these properties, we like the power of real estate is leverage, one of the biggest powers, right? There's cash flow, appreciation, depreciation, tax benefits, like the leverage piece. That means like you in like stocks, you can't really you can't take a loan out from like Wells Fargo to go buy their own stock. They won't do that.
Right.
But they will give you a loan to go buy real estate. And it can be anywhere from 60 to 80, 85% typically. That's awesome because instead of having to go, let's say 100 grand, let's say 100 grand, just keep it simple, to go buy a house for 100 grand, you can go to the bank and get $80,000 and put 20,000 down as a down payment, 20%. And you can go
Right.
buy $100,000 worth of an asset, which is awesome. That's unheard of. That's the power of real estate. And my mentor, I couldn't go to the bank because my net worth and liquidity isn't at 20 million yet, right? Or whatever requirement they would need. But
You
his
only
is,
need like 4 years. Don't worry about it.
yeah, I'm sure, like, exactly, yeah, yeah. So he'll like jump in and like and obviously I won't like brush over this. He's worked a long time to get to this point, so it comes with a lot of hard work and sacrifice, which I think anyone can get to. He just obviously will underwrite the deal. Like he'll play a big role throughout that process. But eventually it's where he signs on a loan and he takes the risk. That's why he gets a big piece of the equity for doing this. He'll take a lot of the risk for signing on it as a key principal. And it's not like it's just him signing on the piece of paper and he doesn't analyze it. He does understand that if things go like south, typically these are non-recourse, meaning that the bank won't go after the signer. They'll go after the asset. But sometimes in some cases it's recourse debt, which means they'll go after the person that's signing on it. That means they're liable. So that's why he'll get obviously some type of compensation and equity for doing that. But that's why when people have a high net worth and high liquidity, it's awesome because you're able to do things like that.
Yeah, I love it. Talk a little bit about the economy and how that affects multifamily, because I know the right answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's like the classic naysayer question, in my opinion. Is like Jeffrey, don't you think it's like a bad time to be investing in multifamily real estate? Because if interest rates are going up, that means property values are going down. Your debt servicing is going up, so that
Right.
then your rents, your overall NOI, net operating income, how much
Mhm.
money the properties come bring in is going down, which means you're catching a falling knife. No.
Great question. And this is like a lot of different approaches that I like to take on this kind of question. So my first one would be like, compared to what? And what's the alternative? If we're not
Right.
investing in real estate, right? Are we going to leave our money in the bank, under your mattress? Are you going to invest in stocks? Are you going to invest
Yeah.
in crypto? What else? What will we invest in, right? Like, so let's start with the first one, the bank. You're maybe making 2%. That's really generous too.
Probably
2%.
not.
Right, exactly. You're not even making 2%, but let's say you're making 2%. Inflation is 8% right now. It's like what, 6% at least. They're trying to bring it down to 3%, sub 3%.
Yeah, I think we're still at like 7% or something like that. I don't know. I haven't looked
Well,
recently,
let's
but
just be generous, like conservative. 6%. You
yeah.
see that -4%. Okay. Now when you go to stocks, stock market obviously it's going up and down every single day. It's volatile, so that's not the. I mean, if you want to be there, go for it, but that's not where I would want to put my money. Crypto, that's with FTX and all that's going on there. That doesn't seem like the best alternative either. And then just leaving it out of the bank in your pocket, that means you're making 0%. Now zero minus
You're
6%,
losing 6%.
-6%. Exactly.
Of inflation.
So with real estate, there's obviously so many benefits, but that's my first point. Is like where else? What's the alternative? Now, if there is no
Mhm.
alternative, so why does this mean like why is this the right investment? Now, I think there's obviously many different things going on with the economy, but one thing is rents in certain markets, although they are decreasing, they're still going up a certain amount. They're still increasing just by not as much, not by 18%. Like, oh man, that sucks, right? Now it's just
Right.
10%, and now it's just 8% or 5%. But as long as, even if they were to be stable in certain markets, which that's why it's important to invest in certain areas that I believe in. I think the Sun Belt is a great place to be because a lot of people are moving here. And there's obviously a lot of jobs coming here as well. And with that
Right.
means we'll still have that demand for rental properties. And as interest rates go up, specifically in the mortgage, with mortgages and single family properties, a lot less people are able to afford homes, but people still need a place to live. So what does that mean? That means they'll most likely become renters. And if there's a lot more renters, that means the renter pool is increasing. We'll still have demand, at least, if not more demand, for rental property, specifically multifamily. So in our properties, most of them, and I think it's so interesting because I do keep up with like what's going on in the economy, interest rates, and all of that. I think multifamily is still a great place to be, not only for the depreciation benefits, which are the tax benefits. But on top of that, right now, as Warren Buffett says, you want to buy when people are fearful, and you want to be fearful when people are greedy. Right
Yeah.
now, people are fearful, and it's funny because like when 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I got into it, I would be like, everyone's buying real estate right now. Like, I don't even, when would they want to be scared to buy it? Now I'm starting to see. It's so interesting because I kind of saw that philosophy, but didn't see both sides of it yet. Now I'm starting to see, okay, a lot of people are scared and no one wants to buy anymore. That's when you should buy. Why? Because you're able to get these deep discounts on assets that, like, not that long ago, were worth a lot more. And real estate is cyclical, meaning it will come back up. So if you're able to get these properties at a steep discount, I mean, only imagine what kind of benefits and advantages you'll get in the future. Now, you can't be like foolish and just pay crazy prices right now. Obviously, things are changing, and you have to understand how they're changing, which I think is awesome. When you have awesome people in your corner, you can kind of approach that problem with their knowledge. If you lack that knowledge, you have awesome people in your corner, and they've been through cycles like this. So ask them, like, what would you do? How do I approach this differently right now? But that doesn't mean there's no opportunity, and I think that is what this is a great opportunity to buy. So I'll just leave it at Warren Buffett saying, be greedy when people are fearful, when there's blood in the streets, and be fearful when people are greedy. And right now, people are not greedy; they're fearful. So I think this is the best opportunity to buy real estate in a long time, and I think it'll get better as who knows what will happen next year with the recession. A lot of people think there's like a high likelihood that we will have a recession, which obviously who knows? Like we don't know where interest rates are going to go. The Fed most
Yeah.
likely will raise interest rates December 13th through 14th. I think that's when they're meeting. It's like 90% plus 91% based on an article I was reading today that they're going to raise it 50 basis points, which is who knows? Like if they do that, that's fine. Obviously we do certain things on our properties to mitigate that risk in regards to our interest rates. If it's floating debt, you can buy a rate cap and small things like that. Not saying that's going to fix the problem, but there's certain things that you can do to mitigate risk. But on top of it, I think it's better to be in the arena than in the stands. And I'd rather like buy stuff today and try my best to mitigate that risk, but understand that I'm taking action, trying to improve my company, improve my situation with myself, my investors as well, by actually doing deals versus just sitting on the sideline and waiting for things to happen.
No, I 100% think it's the best time to buy multifamily real estate, especially, but any real estate in general is when interest rates are high specifically. And I'm going to give you touched on it a bit, but I'm going to go even more into depth into it of the fact that when interest rates are high, that price is so much more important than interest rates for when you buy an asset. Like the price you buy it at is 10 times more important because what'll happen is A, like you're saying, rents over time will always go up. I guarantee you rents will be more in 10 years everywhere than it is today, right? So no matter what, your rents are going to go up. What rate goes up depends, right? Unless you invested in like rural Kentucky, like, okay, like you should have chosen somewhere where there are people actually having babies, right? Other than that, like your rents are going to go up. Two, once those interest rates go back down, and you either refinance or it's variable interest rates, then your NOI just immediately goes up and you immediately just get free money for doing nothing, basically, which is pretty cool in the sense that I think single family, multifamily, whatever it is, now is the time to start buying. Don't wait till like the bottom or whatever, or don't wait until it starts going back up. The time is now to start buying and holding real estate. I think it's a little harder for flippers, like people who are going to buy and then immediately resell. That's hard. You have to buy at a really, really, really deep discount. But if you're going to be in it for the long run, this is the freaking time, man. Like I agree with what you were saying. So we've hit an hour. So I just want to ask you my last question that I always ask everyone that I really like asking people. Jeffrey, if you could go back to you right when you were just starting real estate, you're 17, you're just starting to read the books. What would you say to yourself then as you are now, knowing everything that you know now, if you could like go back in time?
Yeah, I would say read this book, Who Not How. The reason I point to this book is because if like you're starting, you're brand new, obviously you might not know much about what you're trying to get into, but if you can just find people that do, and I always like to go to metaphors. So there's a John D. Rockefeller on one of his interviews, or in the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talked about it, where he was at his desk and there was people that were like critiquing him and accusing him of not knowing much and kind of being dumb, quote unquote. He was like, well, I know what I need to know to run my business efficiently. And you can come in here and ask me any question you want, and I guarantee you I'll give you the answer. And people started walking in, and I'm probably butchering the story, but you'll get the gist. So people were asking him questions, and he'd push a button on his desk, and a specialist in whatever topic that they were asking him, like some random question about like world history or something, would come in and answer the question, and he'd say next question. The point of that is he didn't know everything, but he knew people that knew the answer to whatever it was. That's what I'm trying to create, is a network of people, and I've done that to a certain extent. I've done that to be able to get to the point where I am. Is I built a network of people I can tap into, where if I have a question that I don't know the answer to, I'll reach out to them and leverage their knowledge to be able to answer that. Obviously, I try to make it a symbiotic relationship, but if you're brand new, and if I was to go back and tell myself that, I would say read that book and understand that it's not about what you know, but who you know. That's why the title of the book is Who Not How.
Yeah, love it. I love that book. I want to. It's a good book for sure. All right, my man. How can people bring you value? Like what? Well, actually, let's first start off. How can somebody reach out to you, just in general? Is it Instagram? Like, how do you want it? How do you want people to find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at Donis Brothers. You can find me on Instagram at Jeffrey.Donis, and any platform for social media, Donis Brothers. And then we have a podcast called The Real Estate Monopoly, where we interview multifamily and just other real estate professionals on.
Tell me if this is right.
Sorry, yeah, The Real Estate Monopoly.
No, like these. Look at the lower left hand corner.
Jeffrey, just Jeffrey.
EY.
And then our website if you're interested in going to our checklist. If you're interested in like learning how to vet certain deals and kind of have a checklist as to when you're looking to passively invest in anything, it's an awesome checklist. It's www.donisinvestmentgroup.com/checklist. Feel free to check all that out. And as always, feel free to reach out to me. I'm a resource.
www.donisinvestmentgroup.com/what?
Checklist.
Checklist. I'm putting these up on the lower left-hand corner so people can see them and make sure they spelled it right.
Thank you.
Cool, man. So, all right, when somebody reaches out to you, what should they say? What do you need? What's the value that they should be giving to you in order to get into your, get what they want from you?
Yeah, tell me first that you heard me on this podcast. Jonah sent you. And that way I know where you're coming from, because I have a lot of people that do reach out. And if you can reach out to me personally, my other one, Donis Brothers, Kerwin, my other brother, will answer, but he might take a little bit longer. So if you have a specific question for me, just reach me there. It's JEFFREY, sorry.
JEFFREY.Donis.
Yeah. And if that doesn't come up, just look up Jeffrey Donis.
I mean, they'd eventually find it, but nonetheless, I want to. They at some point find it.
Yeah. But you can just say, like, give me, like, typically what I would ask anyone is, like, what books have you read? So if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad or Think and Grow Rich, and these are on YouTube, so, like, if you have access to the internet, you should be able to listen to it at least. I say listen to those 2 books before you reach out. Typically that way it shows that you're, like, truly passionate and serious about whatever you're trying to do. And that way, we're both kind of making the most of our time. So as long as you've read those books, or you can say you have, then I'm happy to talk to you. And I think that's pretty fair.
Okay, awesome. That's cool, man. You've been an amazing guest, man. I've really enjoyed it. I really liked hearing yours because, like, I'm thinking about how, like, I'm going to get into the multifamily space. So I want to, don't leave after I end this, because I kind of want to talk to you a little bit also about that mentorship and, like,
for sure,
what it entails and stuff like that, because I might join it. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Guys, they have amazing content. I don't know if I follow you personally, but I follow definitely the Donis Brothers one.
Thank you.
It's pretty cool stuff. They got some good editing going. It's like, it's pretty tight. You should 100% watch it. Jeffrey, my man, do you have any last words?
I would say the last thing is, if you're not, whatever you are, like, faithful or not, just believe in something. I believe in God, but whatever you believe in, have some type of faith. I think that's where it starts, having belief in yourself. But on top of it, taking massive action, you'll be able to achieve awesome things.
I love it. Awesome. Guys, next week, the podcast, it's still going to be at the same time. It's going to be a very interesting one. I'm going to not be on it. I'm going to be I'm already in the Dominican Republic right now. I'm really happy. There wasn't like too much cutting out at all. It was like pretty damn smooth for the fact I have Caribbean internet. I am going to have Munif, Saza, and Love Francis. I don't know if you know them, Jeffrey. They're more sub-2 people, but they are a husband and wife couple, and they're going to interview each other on it. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be an interesting one, very different, getting much more relationship-y and businessy. It's going to be really fun, guys. So don't miss that one. That's going to be same time, it's Thursday, 5 p.m. PST. It's going to be amazing, guys. Thank you so much. I will see you on the next one. Let's go.